Hello, community, and welcome back to another Keeping It Real with Dr. Anita podcast. I am your host, Dr. Anita Polite Wilson, C-suite trusted advisor, elite team strategist, and board director, preparing businesses to navigate culture, complexity, and change. This is December, the month of gift giving and holiday cheer. And we are so excited to be discussing on this real conversation from the C-suite, the gift of diverse partnerships. And to illustrate that point, I've got Dr. Mayra Austin, founder and CEO of Management Cues, and Dr. Sarai Koo of Project Spices. Dr. Koo is a culture engineer, and we've been talking this month about culture, neurodiversity, spices, shifts, and all the good things that we should be thinking about at the end of the year so that we can start next year with a bang. Now, you may have heard that we have a studio audience member in the background. Dr. Mayra, who's your special guest in the background there?
Oh my goodness, is Sally my German Shepherd. So please excuse her for the
Sally's
ruckus.
the German Shepherd. She wants to be involved in the conversation. So this time, community, we're going to get some insight into how neuroscience can help us become the leaders that we mean to be. Get this, in order to create cultures that can thrive in 2025. Now, the reason that I wanted to bring up Sally is because Dr. Mayra has a really interesting story to tell us about her experience with neuroscience personally and how that also impacted her professional life. So, Dr. Mayra, share with us.
Yeah, so I have quite the uncanny story. I actually spent about 5 years experiencing neurological issues. And I'll keep it brief for the sake of our amazing chat today. But I basically was having my brain and body send the wrong messages to one another. And what look at Dr. Koo. And what that caused was my body to, in essence, attack itself. And it was extremely painful. And I had a life-saving surgery just 3 years back, so not too long ago, that gave me my health and my life back. And so that really forced me to explore a lot of what Dr. Koo is referencing actually is what was I putting emphasis on? What was my experience like? And what did my cup look like when it was full? What did it look like when it was empty? And was I happy? And so all of these things combined really pushed me towards launching Management Cues and understanding the experiences that people have. Because I'm an operations leader, I was always just really passionate about managers in the space and building their capacity to lead. And so that's really what then just led me naturally to neuroscience. And in the process, I met an amazing engineer, Suleiman Bentaleb, who later became my partner in neuroscience through our partner Neuron, who's conducting all of this great research that's backing up what we're saying. So it's not just word of mouth, it's actually proven.
Wow, phenomenal. So first of all, thank you for sharing a very personal story with us. I appreciate that. What was the one personal lesson learned that you took from that and applied to your professional leadership style?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my lesson was to carve out something that fuels me. So that burns, right? That you're so curious about, that it leads you and it fills your cup, right? You won't work a day in your life if you're doing something that you love is absolutely true. And I think that it speaks to some of the components for Project Spices. It's understanding yourself a little bit better. And I don't think I would have understood myself to the degree that I do today if I hadn't gone through that terrible experience. I also think that understanding and giving ourselves that space gives us courage. And a lot of the time we lack courage to do the things that really benefit us as a whole human being. And so I think that's the lesson that I walked away with.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Mayra. Dr. Sarai, what do you want to add to that? Any insights?
It just reminded me of something. It's very interesting. That word courage and the word culture only happens if each and individual of us experience a trigger. That trigger is not because somebody else pissed us off. It's because that's the very area that we need to heal from.
Okay, wait. Say that again, because that was powerful.
if I can repeat myself, in order for culture to really happen, we need to have the courage to look inside of ourselves, that when we are triggered by somebody else, by someone or something, it's not because somebody else pissed us off. It's because that's the very area we need to heal from. Our past carries us to our present. And if we don't check ourselves, it's going to wreck ourselves. So we got to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, because we can't continue living in a broken soul. We need to heal, have the courage to fight the good fight of healing internally to become the whole person that we want to be externally.
Wow, what you just said is so powerful, and it's making me think. I think it might have been towards the end of our first conversation or towards the beginning of our second conversation, where I said that we need to know our own triggers so that when we are trying to hold a space with another person, we can recognize so that we can not go there. And when I think about what triggers me and what you just said, I've got some healing to do around some things, because I always thought it was this person. And so in order not to say something that I regret, I would just kind of, mute myself. But what you just said makes a lot of sense. There's some healing that has to go on in here. Can you say a little bit more about that, specific to neuroscience? How can we use neuroscience to help us heal?
Is that Mayra or me?
You.
Oh, me. Okay. So say that somebody pisses you off. Like, for example, I don't like the way the person talks to me, right? Then it lands on, rather than saying that person, then you say, has there been a time when that kind of the name of a person, the way that the person looks, or the vibration of the pitch or the tone landed on me differently and I didn't like it in my past? Is there something that's resonating from my past that's carrying on? Like, in psychology, right? In I Love Lucy, there was a clown, and every time Lucy said Martha, like the clown would come and hit her. It's like there's a trigger that happens. And so when we get that trigger, that light bulb, that's the very area that says who, what, where, when, how, why. And then you go, the 5 whys go down. Right. Why am I thinking this? Say why? And you can actually get to the root. And then you make the choice. That's neuroscience. We make the choice. How do we want to rewire our brain? Is cognitive reappraisal. How are we going to change the situation and the story around? Because the only person that's being impacted is only us. Like if we're like, well, I'm the only one pissed off, because you're the only one pissed off. Everybody else moved on. And so that's one way to really shift our mindset and shift the way that we're going to show up moving forward. But if we're not aware of that, and people often don't want to change, they say they want to change, but when it actually happens, they say, no, you change. But remember, when you point the finger, there's 3 pointed back at us. So let us change first.
What you just said reminds me of the fact that in between an action and a reaction, there's that space where we have choice. At the moment, the person's name is escaping me, but it reminds me that we typically allow ourselves to be run by the fast brain, which is back here, instead of slowing down and being thoughtful and letting the amygdala take over, which is the slow brain. And that's where we make that decision between how I'm going to react. And we need to be willing to accept that our response is our responsibility, something that my dear friend Terry Wilson mentioned in our podcast when we were talking about discussing hot topics without torching relationships. We need to not only be aware of our own triggers, we also need to take responsibility for our response. And to your point, we need to be willing to stop fast brain and work from the slow brain. We need to be willing to arrest the amygdala and work from the prefrontal cortex that allows us to take the time to make the decision, including the decision to decide whether or not we want to change. Thank you so much. Dr. Sarai, Dr. Mayra, thank you. Wow. Not only have we been talking about the gift of diverse partnerships, but we've also been talking about the importance of neuroscience and how neuroscience can help us become the leaders that we want to be in the workforce of 2025 so that we can all thrive. Community, I hope that this last podcast of the year, our last real conversation from the C-suite, brought me as much joy as it did you. I want to give our guests an opportunity to share one final thought that we hope you carry with you at least through January 3rd, let's say. One thought that we want you to remember. Dr. Sarai, you first, please.
I have to think right on the spot. I think it's the seas. We're either going to fall in the sea or we're going to rise to the occasion when the sea storm comes. And we're going to experience a sea storm. And how are we going to navigate? And one thing I'm going to say about culture and inclusive leadership, when there's a storm, right, the rising tide raises all boats. Mm-hmm. And it's not you or the other, it's a we and it's our. And it's mm-hmm. our decision to make that change today and for our future.
Words of wisdom. Thank you, Dr. Sarai Koo of Project Spices. Dr. Mayra, what do you want to leave with our community?
Yeah, I mean, I could just go all day with Dr. Koo. It seems like she just lights my fire.
Right.
So I think my final thoughts is the reaction and the interaction and the triggers. There are neurochemicals that elicit that. So one thing that for me is life-changing and altering in the management and leadership space is letting our leaders and managers know that we actually create a reaction that's chemical. And the chemicals that I typically begin with are oxytocin and dopamine, because oxytocin is what takes place and is activated when we're experiencing trust, right? We talked about belonging. And dopamine is what's happening when we're feeling motivated. So this isn't soft. This is hard data that's rooted in science. And it actually is living every time we interact with somebody. So thinking about what Dr. Koo said, I think it's essential. It's necessary. It's a must for us to teach our leaders and our managers that every time they're engaging in something is happening that is beyond magical. And we have some domain over that.
You are so right. And I want to reemphasize what you've said. And I've heard this off and on throughout my career when I discovered my love for organizational leadership. And that is this: soft skills is the hardest part of leadership. So let's take that into the new year. And what I want to leave with everyone is a construct that I learned late in the summer that I absolutely love. Forgive me for not being able to quote the person who originally said this, but this is what I want to offer to you to close out 2024 and arrive ready to thrive in 2025. Diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is an outcome. And with that, I wish you all happy holidays and the best new year you could possibly hope for. If this conversation or any of my podcasts throughout 2024 or our previous years have helped you to reframe a hot topic conversation from difficult to different, please share it with your network. In the meantime, please stay in the flow with me. Follow, like, and overshare any podcast that you found valuable. Please add your own comments and share it with your network. Our community is a learning community, and I want to hear your voice. Until next time, this is Dr. Anita reminding you to stay blessed, keep it real, and Happy New Year.